So you could have been a footballer. Instead, you went and became a DJ, presenter, broadcaster. We know that you've had a very successful career. It's long, it's sustained, it's ongoing. What is your secret sauce or your secret ingredient to staying, like, without being too controversial? How do you stay relevant without being that shock DJ? What is your secret ingredient to a long broadcast career?
Think about it, Jill. I've been on radio every day, right? Every day, Monday to Friday, since December 21st, 2005. I have never done a show for once a week, ever. I've been on radio every day for the last, I don't even want to count the years. So that needs one heck of like consistency in what you do. And not just like how you craft your radio show, but also having an interest in people, having an interest in the world around you. A lot of the stuff that I talk about on my radio shows is just my experiences, like things I've seen, things I've experienced, people I've met, and how what is happening in the world has an impact on me and the listener. Once you lose that, the desire to get on air and share something with Jill, once you lose that, it is time to quit. Once you drag your feet to a radio show, like, oh, I can't believe, like, I can't wait. So if you've got a 3-hour radio show, if you hit 1:45 the third hour and you're like, I can't wait to run through this last hour, that is the sign for you to leave radio. I've never experienced that before. I've worked with many people who have walked into a studio looking like they're in a mortuary. And it's sad. And I then feel blessed. I will never sit here and say radio has been unfair to me. Radio has done me dirty. Radio has fucked me over. Actually, radio has made me. So I will forever be eternally grateful to the medium for what it has done for me. And the reason it produced that for me is because I was consistent.
You showed up.
I showed up all the time to the best of my ability, more often than not. One of my lecturers, in fact, my radio lecturer at the time, Ruan Fenter, used to always talk about, practice perfectly. So when you rehearse, when you practice, do it perfectly, because perfect practice makes perfect. So in however I prep for the shows, in whatever work I did before the show even started, it was literally like perfection. So once you're on air, all you can do is try your best to reach that level of perfection. Listen, there are some bad shows. Sometimes you do a show and you're like, this didn't quite land the way I thought it would. Or, nah, man, we didn't do justice to this topic. Or, no, that interview that we had with that guest, actually, we missed the juice. The juice was this, not this other thing. And so as radio people, we need to understand that we are constantly growing. Every radio show is a lesson. Every radio show is a lesson. So consistency, always willing to learn, and having an interest in people and the world around you.
We've been friends how long?
Forever.
Yeah, since 2007. That's when I started at YFM. We didn't even have Facebook yet.
Exactly.
So I didn't even know what a personal brand or an influencer was yet. But I don't even know who you vote for, which I don't want to know. And I think that's one of the things which make you quite relatable, is that people don't always want to hear about you and your opinion and what you have to say. They want to be asked about themselves, and they want to learn and be heard. And I think that's something that you've mastered. Is radio is an impactful medium. Every time you walk into a studio, it doesn't matter if you've now got the money to pay off somebody's loan and, it's a big feel-good moment, or it's just something that you said that somebody needed to hear at that time. Yeah. You've created that impact. And I think that for me is what, if I had to say, what is your something, I would say impact.
I'm happy to hear that, right? And I'll tell you why, because that's the intention. And it's not always easy to have this impact when there's other factors, like the environment you're in, the radio station you work for at the time. Are they giving you the support you need? But I always go back to, and it's interesting you speak about Facebook, to say before Facebook and emails, it was just a microphone and phone lines, right? And a listener, nothing else. Whether you're trending on Twitter or not, whether you have a post of you walking into the studio before the show, none of that stuff mattered to a radio listener. And to be quite honest with you, in my opinion, I don't care how you look before the show. When I listen to your show, I want to experience magic. You could get to a studio all dressed up. You could get to a studio, like being choppered in. That means nothing if you're not going to give me magic on air. Your show could trend every day. And I've seen over the years, many shows have trended, and some for good reason, and some just because they have really great social media activity. But for the listening experience, that for me, your trending radio show hashtag means nothing to me if what I'm hearing on air isn't magical, isn't memorable. And that's, I think, where a lot of people should not make the mistake. To give radio a good radio content requires you to produce content that is going to work well on radio. Not something that's going to look great on Instagram. Yes, it will help, because the idea is do something great on air, capture it, record it, and share it online. Great, perfect. But it's not the other way around. So a lot of the times people make the mistake, like we come up with something that will work visually really well, but then it's like, but on air, does it actually make sense? So for me, even before there was all this, the advent of social media, at a very simple, basic level, you can create magic on radio with just a mic, and if you're lucky on that day, phone lines. That's it.
And I think that's where I started in my career as well. Within radio, I was with YFM for 11 years selling radio space. In that time, we got Facebook. I started to watch the DJs grow their own communities. I started to see some of the communities growing bigger than their actual listenerships. And I now work full-time with personalities, celebrities, influencers, building personal brands. But it's exactly what you were saying. What works on one platform doesn't necessarily work on the other platform. And I've had a love for radio since 2007 when I started working there. And it's the theater of radio that is so exciting, because if you're in the studio, it's chaotic.
Yeah.
It's absolutely chaotic. People are running around, but when that red light goes on, DJ's on, everything's smooth, sounds beautiful out there.
Yeah.
And the problem is, my main mantra was the client must never see what happens behind the scenes.
Because think about it, Jill, when you are at a restaurant, do you really want to see what happens in the kitchen?
No, absolutely not.
Like, oh.
Exactly, because and that stage, it's like all the outfit changes in the back of the theater.
Yeah.
You want to see just the show, and I think a lot of DJs now, or presenters, because I work with a lot of them, they're lost because what works on social media doesn't translate onto radio.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just live stream a show and think that that's enough as content.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I mean, my product that I create is content.
Yeah.
So it's from personal brands, growing personal brands as yourself, being a something, having a niche, niching down, and then producing content that adds value to a person, not telling a person what your value is.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is about knowing the terrain and the space you're in. So again, I feel like social media has really been a great tool that radio can use. And hell, we need to use it and explore it like in every way possible. But I think radio people should always remember that when you're creating content for on air, for radio, you need to think about the listener. If you get that magic right, I promise you, recording it is going to be a breeze. Bringing the visual aspects to life is almost just like the cream. It literally just happens naturally because, hey, the magic and the source is in the big idea around what we wanted to do on air.
I think a lot of like the agencies and the brands haven't actually caught up yet with the crossover between radio and social media, and obviously TV and everything. When I work with my people, what we do on TikTok is completely different to what we do on Instagram, because they're two different platforms. And then what they do on air on their radio show is also completely different.
Yes. Yeah.
Honestly, a reality TV show of a behind the scenes radio station, especially back in the day in YFM, it would have been X-rated, okay? Completely.
But radio's always found itself in a position where, people have always said, this thing is going to kill radio and that is going to kill radio. And all we've done as radio people is use every new media, you name it, to complement what we do.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
But radio first.
Radio first, but to complement what we do. Because in essence, radio can work with anyone. Like, that's literally, people said, MTV was going to kill radio. And then we started streaming radio shows. And then people said, the internet is going to kill radio. And then we started streaming radio shows. And, podcasting is going to kill radio. And it's like, well, if you think about it, I mean, what are we doing on radio, right?
But you'll find as well, most podcasts have had to go visual.
Yeah.
People don't like listening to podcasts as much as they like going onto YouTube and actually watching the podcasters interact. So that, I remember at YFM as well, we did try this whole thing with Soweto TV where we broadcast the breakfast show.
Yes, that was with DJ
TV.
Smooth.
Yes, but
yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
And actually, that was so revolutionary because we were like, wow, like a radio show on TV, we only see the stuff in America.
I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
So... yeah, I guess using all the sort of tools that we have, in our pocket, and a lot of this as well. It's we can take this back. We could talk for hours about sort of self-broadcasting and how wonderful social media has been for artists to be able to self-broadcast and get known and build a personal brand. We talk about the market being cluttered and difficult to be spotted, but I always talk about the bottom of the market being cluttered. Like, you've got to be at the top, right? Okay, so you've got to, like you were saying, it's got to be perfect. You've got to actually strive for perfection. You can't get cross with the platform or the audience for your failure or your non-growth. Don't blame the algorithm. I get this a lot.
So I wanted to also just touch on this idea that radio has gone soft.
Yes.
And you made reference to like shock jocks. Some of my favorite radio hosts were sort of what people would classify as shock jocks. I was a Phat Joe fan, Jeremy Mansfield, and Gareth Cliff during his 5FM days. I really enjoyed the radio that he does. I don't always agree with his politics. Sometimes I'm like,
it's not the point.
But those people, in my view, mastered the art of being able to pull directly, sometimes aggressively, at people's heartstrings. And by that, I mean, when you talk about, producing content that's going to get people emotional, those are some of the people that I thought did it in the most spectacular fashion. Sometimes calamitous. Phat Joe is one of my icons, but, him and I would always joke about this. I remember when I was at Metro and he arrived at Radio 2000. I'm like, the Joe. So how much time we giving you, sir? 1 month? A year? 6 months? A week? Because somewhere along the line, he's going to piss off like literally everyone in the room, where not even one person is like, okay, Joe, you can stay. But I loved the radio that he did. You know why? Because it challenged convention. It broke rules. It challenged the idea of, the perfect radio show that, starts and ends and has, markers for everything. The features are like Phat Joe was just brilliant. Great storyteller, flipping hilarious, always willing to push it, sometimes way too far. And I think that is the thing about it. The thing about being the so-called shock jock is that, how long of a career in radio can you honestly have doing that?
So you and I have had lots of conversations about this because you come from the broadcast side. You've got to make the content and you've got to make it interesting and keep the audience engaged. I've got to appease the client and the brands to make sure that they are in an environment that is friendly to their brand. So but now here's the thing, Jill.
Here's the thing. And we can fight this out because sometimes that has been the detriment of radio, where we're too worried about what clients think. Yes, they're paying for the airtime, and by extension, we're paying your salary. We get it. But do you not know this canvas that you're in? That it's a creative space, which will always put, freedom of thought, idea, and to some extent, speech, like at the forefront of, whatever you hear on radio. So surely you need to understand that, this is not like a perfect billboard that you can curate on the N1 freeway. This is radio. And baby girl, we're live. You know what I mean? And things happen. And sometimes the edge that radio gives is what brings people and keeps listeners entertained and glued. And so I feel that sometimes the commercial imperatives that radio stations have to constantly hit targets, reach the bottom line, hamper creativity. They really do.
Of course they do. But I mean, I'm seeing it now as well in influencer marketing. The micro direction that the client now brings to an influencer campaign, it's no more about the influencer's creativity or popularity or the way they speak. They want to micromanage it and direct it from almost into a TV commercial. You and I have actually worked on a couple of these where we've gone like, okay, and the client is very involved and there's about 20 agency people in the room asking silly questions. So it's exactly the same. But from my perspective, and I'll have to fight the good fight. I'm a creative myself, so I get it, I understand it, and I love the magic of radio. And if we could take advertising off radio, I think it would be a lot better.
Yeah, but we just have to figure out, like, how do we get paid? Oh, no, I get a crowdfunding. Let's just get the public.
Well, how does Mac G get paid? So Mac G, perfect point in case. Great broadcaster, very, very interesting. Masterful at getting people to talk about things that they really shouldn't talk about on air, like really masterfully making them feel comfortable enough to overshare, but gets very upset when brands pull out or where I remember, I think it was a Nedbank thing where they like sponsored one show and then like afterwards they were like, no, we can't. But he was talking about smashing this one and smashing that one.
But for a brand, Jill, that that's what that person does on their platform.
Yeah, they wandered into the wrong territory.
So when you put money there, for heaven's sake, what are you expecting?
Yeah,
and what I'm trying to say here is, sometimes the idea that are advertisers going to like this hampers the edge that I feel we as broadcasters have. It really does. And sometimes we end up falling into this groove of, okay, as long as it doesn't piss off the advertiser, I think we're okay. But I must also say that the challenge for radio practitioners, including me, is to constantly find creative ways to work within that ambit of, it may not piss off the clients if we do it like this, or actually forget about the clients. We're not going to think about advertisers. We're going to think about what impact we want this content to have on the listener. And if the client loves this radio station so much, then they're going to keep pumping money in it, because what we do is make the listeners that are their clients happy every single day. And that is the challenge to us as broadcasters, to find that sweet spot.
Yes, but you and I both know, like now we can just talk like freely about this, right? You and I both know that we have gone to advertisers with brilliant ideas which have been kind of crafted from listening to our audience, listening to your social media audience, actually reading the DMs and picking up the most frequently asked questions and crafting content that will give this back to the people. And then you'll go to an advertiser, and the advertiser would have hired some research agency, and the research agency has now told them that these are the people that we're now trying to reach. And you're going there with a million Twitter followers, you know, who have asked for the same thing, and we can pitch that idea to the advertiser, and we still won't get the sponsorship. It's one of those things that you and I have learnt along the way. Well, until I think advertisers start to realize that the power is actually not where the money is. The power is where the person who holds the audience is. I don't think that dynamic will ever change.
Because the relationship is different. A brand has a different relationship with, you know, audiences than what a personality or broadcaster has. When I speak to you about something, I'm not speaking to you commercially. You know, if I'm having a topic on air about, like, you know, the one thing that you are saying no to your child for, the one thing that they're constantly asking for, you're just saying, no. I'm not thinking about commercial. I'm not thinking about, would this bank like it? Would that insurance like it? I'm thinking, if Jill is listening and she has a daughter, you know, what is the daughter nagging her about that she keeps saying no to, and why? That for me is the emotional connection.
Yeah.
On my end, I'm done. Right? It's up to the brands whether they want to be a part of those conversations or not.